the same male and female coming together to create the child, or the 666 and 888 coming together to create that 777. So to understand the construct then, hopefully a lot of you would have watched them Matrix movies because they hit the button. So when Morpheus is holding up this battery, couldn't be more obvious in our face to show us it's an energetic construct, just like little batteries walking around on an electrical grid. And they made films like Wreck-It Ralph that I've watched many times because our Marnie's here. Well, yeah, my daughter's here today, by the way, so it's a bit more special for me today. So they're showing the battery, the construct of it, and it's just energy, it's the basis of everything. So before I get into the presentation, I just wanted to make sure that you had this in mind. So this torus field effect that's coming, again, this is like the effect that we see coming from planet Earth, from the heart. But that torus that flows from the heart, it doesn't appear as the torus on the surface, it comes up to the surface as teloric currents. So places like St. Michael's Mount, for example, very strong, powerful place. And when you go there, they've got the gardens growing and the flowers are all growing in perfect geometrical designs, and it's amazing. Most beautiful gardens we've seen. And this is what they know anyway, the teloric currents are coming up, flowing up through the earth, and it's coming to the surface. So they're on the points. So what I focus on a lot in my research is coordinates, and it's because then coordinates always have particular numbers in. So when you find the coordinates as 6111 or 1944, you guarantee that's an energy vortex point, without a doubt. That's where the teloric currents are rising. So as I said with Robert Edward Grant, this is one of his books. So it's just the hemispheres of the brain. But if you put this on a level from the micro to the macro, and we have the obviously planet Earth, the northern and southern hemispheres and everything else. But it's all mind games. And this is what I don't like about Robert's work, because I feel like he's playing mind games all the time and he's trying to produce certain things. As brilliant as his mind is, it makes me wonder who he's working for, basically, and who's trying to control the information. There's always a control of the flow of information. And something they've been trying to do since 2020, because they knew that there was a lot of people starting to figure it out and starting to really chase it and seek it, which probably hasn't happened for a long time. But I know that they were expecting it. There's paintings that I'll share with you along the way that kind of shows that even in the Renaissance period, they were looking forward to this time, this moment in time. They knew it was coming. So it's not just, so the Star of David, again, obviously is the male and female. It's just always the same. They just try and pass it off as whatever. So again, Hinduism, it was exactly the same. Shiva and Shakti, they come together to create that union, the male and female. So in every level, on every culture, it's always coming back around to this, and it's always coming back down to the sound of vibration, or the sound of creation, the primal sound, or the primordial sound. So Michael was spinning his cube before. I've not actually seen that demonstration before. Michael, that was cool. So I could see the macabre spinning on that when he was doing that. The macabre basically connects into Metatron's cube, and it's just showing you how we're constructed of the energies and how it's all masculine, feminine. These are the basis of it. It doesn't matter which way you look at it, it's always just the male and female energy. That's what it's always about. So the Sri Ansha chakra, when I said earlier on, I was talking about the center point, the Bindu. That's the fractal expansion of time, or to others it's the monad. It would be called the monad. So that's the fractal expansion. So to understand the Sri Ansha chakra, you look at it from a bird's eye view. That's the way you look at it, and it's the way you look at Giza as well. To understand Giza, you've got to look from a bird's eye view. And that's when you realise it has the 8 sides, and it creates that compass rose, and it's all perfectly aligned to the north, south, east, west, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the Sri Ansha chakra, that's like a design of creation. Basically, that's how they were showing creation taking form through this fractal expansion of time. Now the bush barrel lozenge, again, to understand it, you've got to look down at it from a bird's eye view, and it's a step pyramid. But what it is, it's exactly the same as the 9x9 cube. As you'll see, it's got 9 squares on the top of it. It's the 9 cube. So the bush barrel lozenge is over 5,000 years old. It's one of the, well, it is the oldest, isn't it, Michael? The oldest artefact found in Britain. So it's very important to them. So what they've known all this time ago is they've known that geometry and mathematics. So of course we've been told that they were very simple people. They didn't really understand anything. They've had greater minds than we could ever even believe.
What's the object in Britain? Is that the gold thing at the bottom there?
Yeah, bush barrel lozenge, yeah. So there's this one,
Sorry?
bush barrow.
Bush barrow.
Yeah, bush barrow. So there's another one called the Clarendon barrow, is it, Michael? Yeah. Mm.
Where is it then?
Yeah, Clarendon barrow as well. That's well, Clarendon barrow actually is, when you look at it, it's actually got St Andrew's cross on it. Clarendon barrow, take a look at it. I should have included that when I'm in Scotland, you know. But I just wanted to focus on this one more because it's, when you look at it from the bird's eye view, it's a step pyramid. So it's the same step pyramid that was created to make Silbury Hill and over near Avebury. So if you think Silbury Hill is a step pyramid, and when you look at it, you can kind of see it. Although when I see it as the hill, it seems to make a lot more sense as a hill, as a mound kind of thing. So with the Sri Lanka chakra, this is how you can tell where it's the fractal expansion from time. So we've got the 14 triangles, just let's come over here a second, sorry. With the 14 triangles, 10, 10, 8, drawing inwards. So the fractal expansion, 14 times 10 times 10 times 8, 11,200. So it's the same, this is cell division, which we'll go into in a second, but it's the same process that starts always. Now this is the Fibonacci sequence of golden ratio of nature, and it all starts at that 0 point in time, and from there it flows out from the 1, the 1, the 2, because this is how it works, it's how creation starts. Now this is all explained in the book of Genesis, you've just got to read between the lines. So this is the 3D version, so this is a Buddha temple, the largest Buddhist temple in the world. So this is the 3D version, what they've created, and this is the 3D version of the Sri Lanka chakra. So it's the Meru mound, that's what it is, it's Mount Meru. So this is, again, it's exactly what's on top of these chapels here, exactly the same things, exactly what they're doing there. So they're targeting the energy, they're harnessing it and bringing it into the chapel. Again, probably to regenerate the cells on a cellular level, because it's all about health, all about vitality, all that type of stuff. It was the most important thing back then. It wasn't all sitting around distracted by all these crazy things in the world. So then another energy point, yin and yang, and again, positive, negative, male, female, night, day, passive, active, or the sun and the moon, which is Solomon's temple, which is one of the most important things for me. My last book release of this year will be based on that exact coding. So again, it's just the red and the blue, the fire and the water, or fire and ice coming together. And with the yin and yang symbol, it's important to understand that this is a sine wave. It's a sine wave that's playing through. So even for back then, when they're creating these symbols, they're using it in simple aspects, but they're showing the entire story just from that. Now, when you read that symbol, just from the black, the white, and the sine wave, you've got it perfect. You've even got the sun and moon in there. It just depends how people perceive this information, kind of thing. So to get closer to the story of creation, then let's look at ourselves. This is when the sperm meets the egg. So when the spark occurs, it's the all spark of life. So they put these things in the films, like Transformers movies. So Transformers is all about electricity. It's all electrical components. That's what Transformers is all about. And they put all this stuff in there and they try and put subliminal messaging. But it's up to the people to see. If you've got the eyes to see, you can see it all day long. You've just got to have the eyes to see it. So when the sperm meets the egg, it creates a spark, and it's from the zinc. It's a zinc reaction. So the two pillars, like I keep saying about the two pillar symbolism, another one that's a very good one. Marie took me advice on this and got them. It's a zinc and a copper bar. And basically what you do if you've got a zinc and a copper bar is you turn yourself into the battery. Now it can be powerful. It's so powerful that Marie said that she could actually taste metal in her mouth from that when she was doing it. So you've got to study it, and you've got to learn it, and you've got to understand what it is when you're turning yourself into this battery form. But on a cellular level, that's what we were working with. They were working with these minerals and these iron and all these different metals as alchemists. They knew exactly what it was. For example, the Templars drank aurum potable. That was the gold elixir. So as alchemists, they were there. So zinc is very important, and the atom. So again, from the micro to the macro and all the way up, we have the cell, the zinc atom. This is the yellow mead stone circle. So stone circles are basically done to mimic the cell, pretty much. That's the best way I can actually put it. Is they're trying to recreate this cell down on the ground, and it's the same cell from the cosmos, basically. And it's because they've understood whatever's happened up there, it's had to have happened down here, and it's still happening all the time. It's constantly happening. So that fractal expansion from the 0 point, it doesn't just end, it didn't just begin and it's over. That fractal expansion is still going on now. That hum that they can hear from the Sri Ansha chakra is the original hum from the Big Bang. It's travelling, it's that sound, it's still vibrating, and it's still causing the creation in this realm. So just getting into the cubes just quickly before I move on. Saturn's cube, now of course it's hammered all the time. It's just time, it's Father time, it's Saturn's cube. Now of course, if people like to say that it's a Saturn-Moon matrix, and it could well be. But as I said, this is the construct that you're trying to free yourself from. You're here to learn. A lot of people believe that we signed up for this before we come here anyway. We've accepted this, and this is what we're here for. It is our journey. So these are the cellular levels of the cube. So I asked Michael in particular to do that cube because I wanted them just to show you how it works on a cellular level. Because what they're building currently in Saudi Arabia is the Muqab, and it's 400 meters by 400 meters by 400 meters. And it creates this. It's exactly what they're creating is this. So 4 by 4 by 4, it creates that 64. So the cube in Gematria, it equals 64 as well. Or the chapel was first built in 1446. Them numbers play out in the cube. What is really important though is this, is the symbol for the zinc, because it is the cube, that's our structure. So that's when people are saying about the 666, they're talking about the protons, neutrons and electrons, they're talking about our molecular structure. So obviously it's the Bible, it's the beast in it, the number of the beast, but it's not, it's the number of man. Maybe that's how they view us, but so the another one that touched on it, Michael mentioned earlier, Blybond started to realise that all this gematria was coded in places like Glastonbury Abbey. A lot of Blybond's work was focused on Glastonbury Abbey in particular. And he started to realise that the research that he had looked at over time in Greek and Hebrew and the different gematria that translated, he started to realise that our buildings have got the same numerology coded in them. The architecture is exactly the same. So obviously he started to be curious about that. Now Blybond was said to have been getting a lot of downloads of information when he was in Glastonbury Abbey. It's where he really started to kick off. So I think Blybond would eventually join a society, a fraternity one time or another anyway. I think he did move into that. But Blybond, even all the way back then, he knew about that cube. So the 9 by 9 by 9 cube that Michael shared with you, the basis of that comes from Blybond's book. So what Michael's done is took what Blybond's done and he's cracked it wide open in some genius ways. Now it is hard to understand, but once you start to realise that all those numbers in the cube are playing out inside this construct and shaping our entire reality, and you understand how important that cube is. But understand that it's a cube within a cube within a cube within a cube. It's like a tesseract. So yeah, that's Saturn for me. It's one of the most important things. It's really. Well, obviously, when something's been given all this negativity, then you can probably guarantee that it's something good for us because they don't want us to have it. The Kaaba. One of the most important things on this planet is that cube. So we have 1.8 billion people focusing their energy on that one cube. How many times a day? I'm not too sure. I can't remember how many times they face the cube each day. But 1.8 billion people are focusing on that cube. So when you think about focus, where your focus is going, that's where your energy is flowing to. So when they're focusing on that cube, this energy is flowing straight to the cube. So of course, when they do they go around, they come around 7 times. That's what they do with the tower. They walk around the cube. Sorry about my pronunciations, by the way. Scousers don't pronounce things very well, but I presume you'll get onto what I'm saying. So these rings around, when they're walking the rings around, pilgrims done the exactly same thing at Glastonbury Tor. Glastonbury Tor has 7 rings around it. So it's the pilgrimage. So Glastonbury Tor, again, is one of the most important things on this planet, along with things like that Kaaba cube in Mecca. Now the Kaaba, it's got some really important alignments. Twice per year, the sun aligns directly over the Kaaba in Mecca. One of the dates is the 148th day of the year. So a lot of you who are on my Facebook page will know that number very well. But if you're not part of my Facebook page, that number comes from the Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa dimensions equals 4081. So that 148th day of the year that's over the cube where the sun directly aligns is very important. The next time that the sun aligns, twice per year, Next time it aligns is on Mona Lisa's death date, which is the 15th of July. That's the 196th day of the year with 169 days remaining. So it's an important thing, but we'll get into it actually towards the end of the presentation because it's the basis of the construct for me. So the atom man. So of course Da Vinci was something that he focused on, but it's more with with our molecular structure. So this is where your 666 comes in, then your protons, neutrons and electrons. So it's showing how we are built, what we're created from, what we've took form. So atom and atom and atom, it's all the same thing, it's just the matter, it's the construct, it's the material world being brought to life basically. So as it shows here, atom, it's all the same thing. You know, the Egyptian story of creation is what really taught me. Give me the answers to Mona's coding of what Da Vinci was really trying to show through his coding. So obviously with the Bible, so God's touching his finger, he's creating the spark with the atom. That's what he's doing. That zinc atom of creation, atoms being born, man's being born into the material world. With Atum's story, he rises on the mound from the primordial waters. So the mound that we're seeing rising is earth, that's the earth starting to form. So that's the very beginning of creation, of earth taking form. So then we've got the Adam and Eve story, with the snake coiling around the tree. So this story, you can find it in many cultures. One of them in particular, that was the Nordic, with Lif and Lifrazer. I've probably not said that right, Cathy, have I? Definitely said that one right, but that's the exact same story. It's their story of creation. So they've all had these same exact stories going on. It's the cause, the tree of knowledge. But Genesis, this is where you start to really understand of what they're playing with and what it's been, how they've been trying to understand. Because if you understand creation, basically you understand everything. You can understand everything in this construct. So Genesis has got it. It's in the word. It's gene. They're looking at our genes. So another thing people say is gene ISIS, or not something I really get on with, but it's the Isis part that interests me as well. It's because it's another word for east, so of course the sun's rising in the east. I think another name for Shiva is actually Isis, as in ES, US. But it's another word for the east, for the sun rising in the east. But Genesis focuses on creation, and it's focusing on our genes. It's focusing on that fractal expansion. And you can tell it through the family tree from Adam, as it starts to expand outwards, and they start going through all the family tree and all the history. So one of the first people that they actually mention in the Bible is Lamech, who lived for 777 years, Lamech. So they give us that coding very early. That's very, very early in the Bible. That's in the book of Genesis, the first books. So that's the fractal expansion. Now our family tree works exactly the same as this. This is why they're showing it. So when I showed you before with the fractal expansion, it was the 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, so forth. That fractal expansion is exactly the same as that. It's all taken form. It's our family trees work the same way. So you have your 2 parents, 2 grandparents, 4 grandparents, and so forth. 8, 16, 32, 64, 128 spreads out, which is why we are all connected as well. That's the one thing, is why we actually are all connected as one. It's because we all come from the same place. So this is when people are trying to trace the lineages and all that type of stuff. You're all going to come together eventually. It doesn't really make a difference. We're all the same. So now this is one of the most important things to understand their story of what they're trying to depict with the Bible, is where you've got Eve coming from the rib of Adam, or the rib of the atom. So we're trying to break that open then, to look at the atom, is to try and show what they're showing there. Now it's the ribosome, it's the rib. They're taking it from the cell, the cellular structure, and they're understanding how we're created. So, of course, the cells consist of the atoms. The atoms are the building blocks of all things on Earth. So what an easy way to look at the building blocks is that I always try and teach people to start off as Platonic solids. They give you the basis of the construct of what everything's formed of. Then if you want to look into deeper, you look into the periodic table and start to see what crystal form, the different elements that take form on the periodic table, and you start to understand how creation is working then. So this is what they're talking about with the rib of Eve, rib of Adam. They're talking about this, the ribosome, and they're breaking open cellular structure. So they're currently doing this at CERN right now. It's exactly what they're doing, particle collision. The particle collision that they're doing is they're breaking open the atoms. They're trying to break open creation. They want to play God. Lynn just let me know earlier that Cern's actually just been started up again today, of all days. So I have to get into a little story about that later, because it'll let you know where my journey comes from, which a few people have asked me how I started this, so I will mention it in a short while. So it's the genetics anyway, it's genetics. Genesis is our genetics. It's this, it's what we're about, it's how we're built and how we take form. So one of the most well-known symbols for this is the caduceus, and it's the serpent energy spiral. So again, it's the male and female serpents coming together. Glastonbury have this, they have the red and white dragons in Glastonbury, or they have the red spring, the white spring beside the road. It's the energy lines that are coming, that flowing from the springs. So of course the Kundalini energy rises, and it's the DNA structure. So I'm sure most of you are probably aware of that already, but because it is the story of creation, I just wanted to make sure that was in there, so you can understand that it's our DNA structure that they're trying to show us, that's trying to depict. So when the energy flows through the spine, of course, then you spread your wings and you reach enlightenment, and you're free, you fly free from the construct. The Egyptians done the same thing, and what they did was the Uraeus symbol, was the cobra protruding from the head. There's a few clues just in the word of Uraeus. So you've got the ray of light, and that's one of the things, is the emanation of light, that is the enlightenment. So this is why you've got the sun always coming down, the sun rays in Egyptian artwork. This is what it's all about. It's like the solfeggio frequencies, for example. Solfeggio is the clue, is the sol, it's the sun. So it's all based on the serpent energy anyway. So another way that we can actually see how they've got rid of this kind of thing is the story of St. Patrick, how St. Patrick come to rid of all the snakes out of Ireland, the one place that doesn't have any snakes. So what can we obviously see that as? They're getting rid of the energy, getting rid of the gnosis that we once had, that all our ancestors had, the druids, the mages, and everybody else who were living pure at the time. So it's the serpent energy rising, it's the emanation coming from the forehead, the third eye. So as I mentioned, there's the staff of Hermes. So with the Egyptian story of creation, it's at Hermopolis. So it's hermaphrodite, it's the male and female, what they're showing. So with the creator gods, the Ogdoad, they've basically got the same names as what they've got, but one's male and one's female, so they've just added the T on the end. And that's all they've done. So it's all the four primordial gods, which is this androgynous theme that Da Vinci was trying to show in his work with Jesus and Mary with the red and blue robe. He's trying to show this story coming together. So the Egyptian story of creation really started to teach me what it was all about, and that story of Hermes. And I met with the Masons over in Yarraman last year, and he was all into his philosophy, and he was deeply into Hermes. That's what he was focused on. So I found that really interesting. I'm going to come across that with the Hermopolis link anyway. So their story of creation, it comes from the chaos, and we see this again with the Greeks. It's their story, it comes from chaos. So order out of chaos, of course, ordo out chaos. It's one of the most used phrases for Freemasonry that we see upon the Scottish Rite emblem and things like that. This is what they're talking about. People always try to bat it again. It's all negative. Attack Freemasonry every chance you get. This is what it's about. It's a story of creation. It's chaos. So from the chaos comes the calm. So obviously at that big bang, it's all chaotic. Everything's colliding. Everything's just being created at that moment in time. So obviously they've done it because they would show, like, obviously Gaia, Earth and things like that, or Nyx with the night and ether and the dark and so on. This is how they would show their story. They would try and give us, but it's all natural, it's all nature. It's people just try and take them and put these connotations to it, that it's always negative. But when you understand that it's nature is the basis of all of it, and our cycles and cosmos and things like that, that's all they cared about. That's what was important to them. So first it was chaos, give birth to Gaia, Eros, and the night. So again, I just wanted to include this because of the fractal expansion, of showing the fractal expansion in creation, just coming to light kind of thing. So you can see that form take shape on the beach and all shells.